So we have seen so much progress over the last 10 years, and the foundation has always supported research that had led to that progress. But along with the research has also supported the career of investigators all around the world. And so we'll now hear two examples of these. The first one, I'm happy to call on stage Angela Lamarca, who is currently a medical oncologist in Madrid, Spain. She is treating patients with hepatopancreatic, biliary, and neuroendocrine tumors, and she also serves in many committees, including the OTC Hepatobiliary Task, the ENSCA, the ENETS, and the ESMO GI Cancer Group. Thank you, Angela.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk here today. Oops, I think this is not the beginning of the talk, sorry. I didn't even touch it. Okay, spoiler alert. So thank you very, very much for inviting me today. It's a very special day. It was great to see my mentor, Professor Vale, getting that award, and also the announcement of his involvement with CCF. So really, really a very special day. And then I was invited to talk about my experience as a fellow. And I really like the title because it says Impact of the Fellowship on Cholangiocarcinoma and Career. And I really think that I have a couple of very clear messages and that I will try to give in the 15 minutes, hopefully a little bit less. But really very interesting to have all these fellowships, and they really impact on our career as researchers. These are my conflict of interest. So my first message is congratulations to the CCF. 10 years supporting patients and researchers is really, really something to be super proud of. So my congratulations to everyone involved. My second message is that the fellowships, and one of the examples is the CCF fellowships, are a key part of what the organizations are doing, not only patient organizations, but research organizations as well. So really nice to see how patient organizations are involved in fellowships as well. And how they impact on cholangiocarcinoma and fellows' career. Well, I think the fellowships have a direct impact on both. They do produce new knowledge that can impact on management, but they also impact directly on the career of the future generations. And I really actually think that the impact is probably much more relevant or direct into the fellowship, into the fellows' career and how we develop further. And a very, very important message to me is that by developing all these new generations, then in the future, hopefully, we can generate more knowledge, not only directly associated to that fellowship and that project, but also because of the additional knowledge that we gain at the time of us being involved in that project. I will explain you a little bit more later. And my message number 3 is a thank you to CCF for providing me the opportunity of this fellowship, and also by my mentor, Professor Juan Vale, because I don't think I could have had a better mentor at all, and I'm here thanks to him, so thank you very much. So I am from Spain. I was trained in medical oncology in Madrid, and I did a trip of a 10-year trip, Madrid, Manchester, Manchester, Madrid, a decade spent in Manchester, really developing my knowledge in biliary tract tumors together with Professor Vale's team. So in 2012, I moved from Manchester to Madrid as soon as I finished my training, and during the 10 years that I spent there, I was really very lucky and able to get a lot of funding. Within all this funding, one of the fellowships I got was the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation Fellowship in 2017. And in 2022, so last year, I have not even made my first year in Spain, but I am now back in Madrid, really developing my own team in hepatobiliary malignancies and really trying to bring to Spain everything that I learned in the cholangiocarcinoma field. So there have been a lot of milestones, and they have already summarized all these, but I think it's very important to understand everything that was happening during this decade that I spent in Manchester. We learned that biliary tract tumors were very heterogeneous. We incorporated adjuvant treatment as a new standard of care with capecitabine. We were also later on incorporating immunotherapy. And we were also developing the second-line treatment with FOLFOX, where I was actively involved with the ABC06 clinical trial, which was a fantastic opportunity for me. And of course, the precision medicine, the molecular profiling, and how this is very, very rapidly evolving, how within 2 years we have identified really more targets, and we are understanding these targets so much better. So precision medicine really changing the field in biliary. How we are really now joining all our treatment options together is not only about doing chemotherapy or targeted therapies or immunotherapy, but how we are really combining all of them together. And I think the future is really looking into these combination strategies. And all this is really reflecting on the guidelines. These are the latest update of the ESMO guidelines with a lot of changes incorporated. So my fellowship, my cholangiocarcinoma fellowship, was really focused on the translational research associated to the ABC06 clinical trial. ABC06 clinical trial was the study, a randomized phase 3 study, really establishing FOLFOX as a second-line treatment option that was later on adopted by the guidelines. And we were aiming to understand potential biomarkers that we could use. Everything started back in 2014, 2013, we did a literature review. There was really not much knowledge about what to do in the second-line setting, and there was really an unmet need in this area. So the ABC06 clinical trial was randomizing patients to chemotherapy with FOLFOX or no chemotherapy, management with active symptom control, which was really focused on symptom control but no treatment. And we were able to show that the addition of FOLFOX was beneficial for overall survival. One of the questions was, of course, doing oxaliplatin, which is a platinum-based chemotherapy after cisplatin, after progression to cisplatin. So one of the main criticisms or concerns was which was going to be the impact of FOLFOX second line after progression to a previous platinum. And what we looked at in this subgroup analysis was whether there was any impact by whether patients were platinum sensitive or not. And this is what I have highlighted in this slide. As you can see, there was not really very much of a difference, and what we could conclude is, regardless of which was the response to prior cisplatin, second-line FOLFOX was a valid option. But there was a very strong rationale to look into DNA damage repair and platinum-based chemotherapy. We knew that these DNA damage repair alterations could be present almost in 20% of patients with biliary tract tumors. There were some initial data showing that in the presence of a DNA damage repair alteration, maybe we were having better response to platinum-based chemotherapy and maybe a better progression-free survival or even a better prognosis. But this was not really fully proven, and there were actually some discrepant results from other studies. So this hypothesis was not fully proved. And this is why we developed the translational part of the ABC06 study, which was funded by the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. And again, thank you for that. We were looking into all the samples collected within ABC06 clinical trial, looking into the FFPE tissue, the archival tissue, and there was also some archival blood available as well to look into the status of this DNA damage repair and which was the impact on the patient's outcome. This is a little bit of a schema. So we were, of course, having the data from the first-line cisplatin gemcitabine. So we were able to link the DDR status with how patients were doing with cisplatin gemcitabine before the study entry. And then prospectively, we were also having the data of how they did with FOLFOX as part of the ABC06 clinical trial. So with this translational research, we were really aiming to look retrospectively and linking the DDR status with the activity of cisplatin gemcitabine and prospectively with the activity of FOLFOX. This is a little bit of the summary, but to really simplify this, what we were mainly doing was extracting the DNA, looking into a 30-gene panel associated with DNA damage repair, and later on associating this with the clinical outcome. The results were presented this year in ASCO GI 2023. We were able to get samples of 59 of the patients, and I think on its own this is a very important message. Out of the 162 patients randomized in the ABC06 clinical trial, we were only able to have 59 patients with a biopsy suitable for the DNA extraction and the DDR gene analysis. This represents around 40% of the patients, and I think is one of the challenges that we are really facing in our clinical practice, not really having enough tissue for molecular profiling. So as Jennifer mentioned right now, I think very important to think also of liquid biopsies for looking into this type of biomarkers. When we looked into the DDR genes, we found around 40% of the population that had enough tumor to be analyzed, having some form of DDR gene alteration. And we were also able to test the germline of those patients, but we didn't really confirm any germline alteration. It looked like all of them were somatic alterations. Regarding the patient outcomes, our hypothesis or what we were expecting that in the presence of a DDR alteration, we were going to have a longer progression-free survival with a platinum-based chemotherapy. And it was a surprise, but these were the data. We were not really able to link that DDR alteration with more benefit from cisplatin in the first-line setting or with more benefit with oxaliplatin in the second-line setting in terms of progression-free survival. And actually, what we were able to see, and you see this in this graph, is that the patients that were having this DDR alteration were actually having a shorter overall survival. So again, our results are not really confirming our hypothesis, but they are really telling us that our biomarkers are not really perfect. It's a piece of information that I think we need to confirm in future studies, and I think it's a reflection of how important it is to test our hypothesis and not to assume the benefit. I would really like to finish up with this slide because I did show you the results of my project and my specific fellowship funded by CCF, but the truth is that CCF has helped me much, much more beyond this specific project. It gave me the opportunity of staying in Manchester for longer, developing further my experience in biliary tract tumors, and I really think it's very important to see how, even though these are the projects specifically associated to this CCA fellowship, what I have been doing over the last 10 years is much more than this. I have been quite busy, and I think during our fellowships we really learn in other aspects, not only that specific project. So thank you very much for supporting these fellowships. They really help us beyond that specific project, that specific title, and hopefully in the coming future we can give it back to the community. I have to acknowledge my mentor in my home institution before I moved to Manchester, Jaime Feliu, of course Professor Juan Vale for the 10-year-old decade that I spent with him in Manchester, and my current team in Madrid, that they are really helping me to develop further. There are a lot of things that I want to do, and Stacy knows that I'm working on developing we are working in Spain, developing a patient group for cholangiocarcinoma and biliary tract tumors, because there is really nothing out there, and it's a huge unmet need, so I'm sure I will be back asking for help. Well, I have already asked for help. And all the funders over all these 10 years in Manchester, it has not only been the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, it has really been a team effort, and I thank every one of them for all this opportunity. And thank you all very much for your attention. Thank you.